Okay. And just while we wait for a few others to come in, I'll just let everyone know first, to thank you all for coming tonight. And just let you know that to ensure we're able to keep the message and to keep our attention focused on the presentation, we've turned off your cameras and your microphones. If we're going to be having a Q&A session at the end of the presentation, so we'll be able to you'll be able to speak at that point. But also, if you would like to, and we can show you how to do this once we're a couple slides in, you can send a direct message to me. My name is Jean-Louis Gaudette. You should be able to send a direct message to me through the chat, and I'll keep track of your questions. And when we get to the end, we'll be able to go through those questions as part of the Q&A. So we're just waiting for a couple more people to arrive. See a few more are coming in. I guess, Daryl, it's about 2 minutes after 7 now. Shall we proceed?
Sure. So, good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome all the residents of Innisfil and attendants for this evening's including the mayor, elected members of council, and the town's chief administrative officer. I'm Daryl Fuller, capital engineer with the town of Innisfil and project manager on the traffic calming strategy. With me today from the town of Innisfil is Carolina Cotillo and Haider Rajab. This evening is our first of 2 open houses for the strategy. We feel that there's been a great deal of effort put into the project to get to the stage we are today. And we're excited to have EXP presenting their findings to you today. Thank you for attending and providing feedback to better this project and in turn leading to a safer, more inviting community. With that, I would like to turn the floor over to John Louis from EXP, who will be moderating tonight's open house.
Thanks, Daryl, and hello everyone, and welcome to tonight's open house. So we're excited to talk to you tonight about the Innisfil traffic calming project, what we've been doing, and where we're going with this. So tonight we have with us from EXP our key team members, Greg Kent, who's our project manager for this project, Peter Lougheed, who's a project engineer and one of our main traffic safety specialists. So he'll be going through the presentation tonight. And my name is Jean-Louis Gaudette, and I'm assisting with the stakeholder consultation for this project. As we go through the meeting tonight, I've mentioned to some of them that we're here early, but some of you may have not have caught this. So we do have your microphone and camera turned off. So we're going to keep those turned off during the presentation, just so we can keep the attention focused on the presentation, on the information that Peter's going to share with you. We will be having a question and answer session at the end of tonight's presentation. So you'll be able to ask your questions there. We'll be allowing the question and then a follow-up to the response that's provided. During the meeting, if you think of a question, something pops up and you want to jot it down, you can send it to me through the chat. We'll show you how to do that in a moment on the next slide. But for now, I want to introduce you to Peter, who is going to walk you through the agenda. Actually, Peter, since we have that open on the slide, why don't I mention that chat feature and then I'll pass it to you. Sure. So you can see on the bottom of your Zoom screen, you should see the little chat icon. So if you click on that, you'll be able to send a direct message to me, Jean-Louis Gaudette, and I'll keep a track of your chat messages, and we'll answer any questions you have in there at the end of the meeting. If we don't get a chance to answer those, then we'll be able to post those on the project website. And just so you're all aware, we are recording tonight's presentation, and the presentation will be available on the project website in the next few days when the IT people are able to get that up. So, and I believe most of you are probably aware of the project website, but we'll have that posted in the slides and at the end of the presentation as well. So Peter, enough for me. Why don't you take it away?
Okay, thank you, JL. Good evening, everyone. We're going to go through this presentation now. You can see in front of you the agenda. So the first step in this is to explain the purpose of this open house session. We're going to go into traffic calming specific to Innisfil. We're going to talk about the pilot projects that are in development. We're also going to talk about the 10-year traffic calming program, which is one of the ultimate results of this project. We'll talk as well about how to get involved, you as community members. We'll go through the next steps. We're in the middle of this project. We'll explain the next steps going on. And then, as JL said, we'll have the question and answer session. So the purpose of the open house is to introduce the community to the concept of traffic calming, which most people are aware of. They see it on a daily or semi-daily basis. But we're going to talk a little bit more on the technical side of traffic calming, an overview of the actual project that is underway. A lot of interest in this. We'll be talking about the pilot projects themselves and how they were put together and what we're hoping to get out of them. And we'll also talk about how you can provide feedback, not only tonight, but moving forward. So with the basic question to start off with is, what is traffic calming? And really it seems like a simple concept, but it actually has a lot of nuances to it. It's a combination of mainly physical measures, not necessarily all, but mainly physical measures that you're trying to reduce the negative effects of motor vehicle use and altered driver behavior. But ultimately what you're trying to do is improve conditions for vulnerable users such as pedestrians, cyclists, and those mobility impaired. So these are the 7 key components or objectives of traffic calming. Obviously, slowing vehicles down is a #1 priority, but also increasing safety for vulnerable users, enhancing the street environment itself, increasing access for all traffic modes, reducing collision frequency and severity. This all comes back to safety. Reducing the need for police enforcement to get people to slow down, and also to reduce cut-through motor traffic. You don't want to just shift a problem from one road to another. Okay, I'm going to hand it over here. We'll have some polls. So you want to take that, JL?
Sure, thanks, Peter. Okay, it's polling time. So what we want to do as we go through today's presentation, we want to get some feedback from you to find out, for the people who are attending tonight, where are you at with respect to traffic calming, and what are your views? So you can see an example of the poll that is going to take place. So they're a pretty simple feature if you haven't used them before. We'll have a question. You'll be able to indicate what your answer is. You can, for this one here, do you feel traffic calming is needed on your street? You can click yes, no, or maybe you're not sure. And then you can see where the arrow is, there's a submit button. So once you fill in your result, you can click on the submit button, and then we'll take a look as a group. We'll take a look at the results, and then move on to the next slide. So the poll, when it's time for the poll, it'll appear on the center of your screen. Just want you to know as well, your individual results won't be able to be seen by others. We're just going to aggregate the results, and so we can all see as a group where we are. And just in case there's anybody who's trying to stuff the ballot box, you can only vote once per question. So that's you can just do that only once. Okay, so if we can move on to the next slide, please.
Yep, just give me a second here.
Yep. Okay, so poll question #1. So Jen, if you could launch the poll, please. So you should see the poll up in front of you right now. And so we're asking you if you feel that traffic calming is needed on your street. So I'll give you about 10 more seconds to answer this one. Okay, all right, so let me see, another 5 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, so let's end the poll. And let's take a look at the results.
So it's kind of interesting here. We're getting a kind of a split half and half, yes and no. I guess part of this question that we're saying is it needed on your street, but there may be a different vote if you said needed on any street in the town. But this is specific to your street. It's a good indication that you do have almost half the people saying that they do have an issue. So this kind of shows the pertinence of this project.
Excellent. All right, thanks, Peter. Okay, so let's move on to the next slide. We have another poll for everyone. Okay. So in poll question number 2, so we're wondering if traffic calming is needed on your street, what are the main things you want to do? And if you could pick the top 3, there's a few things listed. You may need to scroll down to be able to see all of the options there. But so if you could select your results, your answers. Okay, so we'll give you another 15 seconds. Another 10 seconds. Answers are coming in fast and furious. Another 5 seconds. Another 5. Okay, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, so let's see what we have.
So it's a good split here. I mean, the primary focus of traffic calming obviously is to calm traffic and slow it down, but you can see that the number 2, 3, 4, and 5, these all tie into the safety of other users, street users, the street itself, and reducing collision frequency. So it's really good that people are seeing a tie between traffic calming, reducing speeds, but also the benefits safety-wise for all of the community members. So this is good to see how people are starting off in this presentation, how they feel about traffic calming.
Okay, great. All right, thanks, Peter. And so I guess if you want to take it away and talk a bit more about what traffic calming is.
Yeah, so when we talk about traffic calming, a lot of you have seen different things used out on the different streets you've driven on in your lifetime. A lot of what people will refer to as speed humps or speed cushions or some of these other things that we'll show here. This is just a little primer on basically the left-hand side of the next couple of slides. We'll show you the major categories of traffic calming applications. The second column gives you different examples of that type of collision, of that type traffic calming. But what's interesting here, we've added some pictures in of things that you might have seen that you may not have realized fall into these categories. So vertical deflection is really about raising or lowering the profile or the surface of the roadway so that if a vehicle comes and approaches a speed hump or a speed cushion or so on, they feel uncomfortable as their car changes, goes up or down. Some of the examples that we have here is basically a speed cushion and also a raised crosswalk. The second category is horizontal deflection. So that's where you're getting cars to actually veer a little bit left and right, again, making them a little uncomfortable if they're going too fast. One of the applications is called chicanes, and you can see that in the first picture on the right-hand side with the arrow. We'll be talking about this more later on in the presentation, but the idea here, as you can see, is people have to steer around these obstacles and therefore slow their speed down. Another common technique is traffic circles and traffic mini roundabouts. These are not as large as full-size roundabouts, and they may only have been put in place to slow people down. You'll see a lot of that in old quarters of some older cities. The next category is roadway narrowing, and that's basically as it sounds. This is where you're actually taking a lane that might normally be 3.5 meters or 3.7 meters wide and reducing the width of it. And again, it kind of gives the driver a sense of something closing in on them a little bit, makes them a little less comfortable driving fast, and hopefully slows them down. And there's some other examples there of ways you can do this. In terms of surface treatment, what has been done in the past and what can be done is to actually change the surface texture of the roadway. So when somebody's driving along, they don't even realize it, but they're starting to go over a different texture. The car might vibrate a little bit. They may feel, again, a little uncomfortable if they're going too fast. And this can be done in different ways with sidewalks, crosswalks, and even go to the extent of rumble strips, which is not ideal because you tend to get a real shock when you hit one of those. So the next category is pavement markings. And what's being done more and more now is these types of either you could be chevrons or dragon teeth. You can see in the first picture there where there's blocks painted on either side of the lane. And kind of a technique, a psychological technique when you're applying these is to start putting them closer and closer to each other. So somebody driving through the zone feels actually like they're speeding up. And so they just instinctively slow down. Another type of pavement marking is these on-road signs where you actually paint right on the road a message or so on. And so as they're driving towards it, they subconsciously or consciously will read the message and hopefully slow down. The next category is access restriction. This is a little more drastic, but in this case, you could do things like change a road that's two-way to a one-way road, or actually close it off completely from vehicle traffic. And there's other ways at intersections with raised islands and channelization that you can kind of reduce the number of potential traffic turning movements, and even have obstacles in the way so that they can't turn left. And that's an example of how they would see something ahead of them and instinctively slow down. Okay, so here's something a little bit larger in scale when we talk about design elements. One is to use gateways, and this has been done in a lot of communities where you're coming in from the rural area into the urban area, and you actually have literally a gateway, signs that are up, you're coming into a neighborhood, you're coming into a city, and it's giving them a heads up that they're going into a different environment, and hopefully they instinctively slow down. In Europe, they've taken that another level in some towns where they don't have any designated lanes or roads or shoulders or sidewalks and let everybody share the space. And actually, the safety has stayed very stable, and at the same time, people are slowing down. The next category is enforcement. This is not always the preferable way to approach things. You tend to want to have something in place, but enforcement comes in, and this could be in terms of drones or aircraft, or even just the signs that you see that are either fixed or mobile on the side of the road that can display your speed and maybe even record it. So then we get to education, and most things do. And this is about the different types of programs that can be instigated in communities to make young drivers aware of the issues related to traffic calming and safety. Just an interesting one, the PACE car program is where you actually would have, say, during the time the school's out and the kids are all out on the sidewalks and so on, that a car goes through that has a person in it designated to go back and forth through the zone, and therefore slow down the entire platoon of cars going in each direction. That's a little drastic, but that has been used and successfully. Then the last category is emerging technologies, and these things are coming up all the time, all over the planet. Some of these include LED pavement markings, where they actually embed these lights in the roadway that can light up during the day and night and make drivers aware of lane changes or that they're going too fast. And there's several others. One I was going to mention that is quite simple to apply is arrest on red signal phasing, which is when you have a signalized intersection that's actuated. So it only turns green when a car approaches, but when nobody's around, all the lights are red, so that everybody's going to have to slow down when they're coming into that intersection. Okay, there you go.
Okay, all right, thanks, Peter. So it's another poll time. So Peter's gone through and introduced you to a number of different types of traffic calming measures. So what we want to find out from you is if you would support a traffic calming measure in front of your home. So, so we have a poll here, and what we're asking you is, would you support some sort of measure in front of your home? So yes, definitely yes, but it may depend on the type of measure. No, or maybe you're not sure. So some people are already jumping to it. That's great. I'll give you another 5 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay. All right. So let's see what we have.
So what's interesting here, JL, is that in a lot of communities throughout Canada, when the town or city receives the complaint, they have a flow chart of the decision-making process, whether or not to implement a measure. And one of the very first questions in a lot of them is, you made a complaint, are you prepared to have the traffic calming measure right in front of your home? And if the answer is no, a lot of times that complaint is then put aside, and it doesn't go any further down the chart. Basically saying that if you want to solve a problem, you may need to be part of the solution, is really what it comes down to. And it's kind of an even split here, what we've got. Actually, no, we have a lot more yeses, only 2 no's, but you can understand that. I mean, some of the people said they don't think they even need them in their streets either.
Right. Excellent. All right. Well, thanks, Peter. So stop sharing. And if you want to take it to the next slide.
Yep. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the actual Interstellar traffic calming process that's in place and how it's applied. So usually when these things start, you get a request from the public that says, we have an issue with speeding. We would like the town to come in and investigate and hopefully address the problem. The next, the staff will review the request and provide an initial response, because there's a lot of things can be weeded out right from the beginning that it definitely is a problem or it isn't. Maybe a problem that the police need to be involved, maybe because of a collision that happened. So there's different factors that may get to the review stage and be picked up at the initial response. Then they go through the full assessment where the staff gathers the data that they need to make a full assessment. So that would be speed data, that could be traffic volumes, that could be the complaints themselves, field visit, or so on. Then the town staff decides whether or not they're going to make a recommendation on something that should be implemented on that particular roadway based on that complaint. And then hopefully it goes to the implementation stage where, if approved by the council, it moves forward and gets applied.
Okay, me again. So we're curious to see how many of you have actually tried to go through the traffic calming process. So Jen, if you could launch the poll, please. So we want to know, have you ever requested the town to investigate or implement traffic calming in your neighborhood? And we want to know if, yes, you have, no, you never had the need, no, you didn't, but maybe you didn't know how to, or maybe you just don't remember. So I'll give you another 5 seconds. The answers are coming in fast and furious. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Okay, so let's take a look.
So you do have here that at least half of the voters have said that they have submitted a complaint. And we're going to talk a little bit more about the fact that the system that's in place, the policy, the traffic calming policy that the town has in place, along with the warrants, are quite restrictive. So there may be some of you who said that you did submit a complaint but didn't get the response that you were hoping for. And that's part of what this whole project's about, is getting the system to be laid out in a way that the town can move forward and better address these issues.
Great. All right. Well, thanks, Peter. So let's, oops. Okay. All right. Take it away.
Okay, so now we're talking about the actual project that's underway. And obviously the overall project goal is to improve safety for the town, for all those who are residents that work in the town and also visitors. You have a town that's visited a lot in the summer. So this is kind of our itinerary when we started off. To get to the point where we're at right now with the presentation tonight, we're moving on to develop a 10-year traffic calming strategy. That's going to be very important. That's actually going to be where the end result will be locations that are prioritized so that over the next 10 years, the town can move forward with a traffic calming plan. We're going to review and recommend the updates to the town's related policy. So as I said, there's some deficiencies in the policy, just some difficulties in it, and we're going to make some direct suggestions on how that can be improved. And we're also going to develop, and we are developing, a traffic calming guide that includes a blend of the best proven technologies that we found throughout the world, the new forward-thinking technologies. So this is an idea about being proactive in traffic calming rather than always being reactive, and also implementation strategies to address the community needs as a whole. So, okay, so here's our kind of our straight line representation of the project. So what we've done already is a thorough background review of best practice research in Canada, around the world. And it wasn't just, where there's been an educational analysis. It's where these have been used before and have been successful before, especially in our environment. The next that is underway and is moving forward is to design and implement the pilots, the actual 3 pilot studies that we have. So we're going to talk about that a little bit more in a few slides. Again, we're going to prepare a traffic calming design guide. We're working on that right now. It's meant to be something that the town can have in its hand and not require somebody like myself to be there to explain everything to them, that they can go ahead, make decisions, have warrants that are set up to make proper decisions, then move on to the actual potential applications and then how they are applied. So that's one of our deliverables that we're working on. Again, we're also developing a 10-year traffic calming program, which will kind of lay out for the town our suggestions on each year moving forward for 10 years of where the issues are and in priority and how the town can apply their finances the best way to achieve traffic calming. And then finally, we're going to prepare a traffic calming strategy that will go hand in hand with the design guide and the 10-year traffic calming program as a kind of a Bible for the town to use moving forward. And you can see here where we are. This is the public open house tonight. That's the first one, but there will be a second one when we get further along with our process, and that'll give you a second chance to comment on maybe what you've seen with the pilot studies and some of the other information that comes up. And during this, we are meeting 4 times with the technical advisory committee of the town. So now just talking about what we've already come up with for key findings. So we found the available data, traffic data, speed data, complaint data, and we've created a model in GIS, a GIS platform that basically it creates a kind of a model that reflects the warrants that are already in place in the town so that we could run the data through it and see in a proactive way which roadways seem to need traffic calming. We did an assessment of the actual traffic calming policy that the town has, and we also identified 3 potential pilot locations. And in that, we found that 57% of traffic complaints that have come into the town have been about speeding. So it's obviously the #1 issue. We also found that the traffic calming warrants that I talked about in the existing town policy, very, very restrictive. In fact, the first time we went through with the data and looked to see what roadways, the first set of roadways that should have traffic calming implemented, the answer was none. So that's obviously not accurate. So we had to kind of adjust some of the existing criteria just to get enough locations that we could use for the pilot study. And obviously that's the focus moving forward, is the town has a mechanism that's not going to just say no all the time. But it's going to be focused and prioritized so that when all the complaints come in, that the places that really need it the most, they get the applications. There you go.
Okay, so we have another poll for you. So Jen, if you would like to launch that poll, please. So we want to know, so as Peter mentioned, speeding is one of the main issues. So if speeding is an issue in your neighborhood, when does it happen most often? So it could be that maybe speeding is not an issue, but if it is it more likely to happen in the morning or the afternoon, evening, night times, weekends? So we'll give you a moment to think about that. Another 10 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Last chance. Okay, and the poll, and let's see what we've come up with.
So what's interesting here is that the times that are focused on the most here with the results, afternoon, evenings, nighttime, and the weekends, is when you have a lot of other users, a lot of cyclists, a lot of pedestrians. You could have students coming home from school. So that's a concern, that's the time that people are seeing the most speeding, is when safety is the most at risk. So I would say this kind of reinforces the main goals of this study, to focus not just on the actual vehicle going too fast, but what kind of safety implications it has for the other users.
Great, thanks, Peter. Okay.
Go ahead.
Yep, go ahead.
Okay. All right, so we'll go into the pilot projects themselves. We ended up with 3 pilot projects, 3 locations, and moved forward from there. Those were, I'll show you here in a second. The idea with the pilot studies themselves is to provide guidance on traffic management on future arterial roads. So that was what I said about how the warrants right now are too restrictive. That's one of the things that we're testing. We put the data in, find out, how many different locations come out as priorities and so on. The second is actually coming up with a design to implement traffic calming measures on the 3 roads that we ended up with, and then assessing their effectiveness and have the town residents be able to judge for themselves how effective these are. And ultimately, we'll come up with test results before and after speeds and we'll get the numbers. We'll know whether or not these work on the day they're implemented, a week later, a month later, at the end of the study. We'll get an idea of whether or not these work. So, our overall outcomes that we're hoping for is to improve traffic calming programming in the town of Innisfil and develop the more effective toolbox and tools and guides and so on, so that the town can take this information and move forward and be more effective using traffic calming measures. So when we looked at locations, there's two main components to the pilot project. One is the locations and the other are the measures. So we started with the locations. So you have all of Innisfil. We had a GIS model that represented the entire community. We went ahead and added the data in that was available: traffic data, speed data, collision data, complaints, and so on. Put all of that in, and it was basically based on the warrant system existing for the town, as I said. But when we did that, at first we ended up with no choices. We adjusted one criteria, the 85th percentile speed, and when we did that, we were able to get it to come out with 5 locations: Shoreview Drive, 9th Line, Maple Road, Bel Air Beach Road, and Shore Access Road. These were our shortlisted 5 locations. And when it went to measures, when we looked at the measures, I showed you all the different categories and all the potential measures that fall within each category. In the end, we ended up with the master list of 46 traffic calming measures. We quickly got that down to 28 that would be applicable in this type of environment in your town. From there, we had a short list of 13 traffic calming measures. I'm just going to talk about those for a second. So again, that category of vertical deflection, the two that were considered for that category were speed cushions and speed humps or tables. Horizontal deflection is the chicanes. Again, the idea of shifting cars back and forth in the travel path. Road narrowing, so this idea of actually reducing the width of the road, the lanes themselves. Also using pavement markings. There was 4 different ways to do this: converging chevrons, on-road signs, full-length transverse bars, or peripheral transverse bars. Enforcement, we looked at whether or not automated speed enforcement might be an option. As always, education. Education might be misunderstood sometimes. It's not just sending out a flyer in the mail. It could be actually when somebody's driving by and they see their speed go up on a sign, a digital sign. That's actually a form of education as well. So that's some of the other, these are the other 2 options we consider for education. And in terms of emerging technologies, the 3D pavement markings, it's not a common thing to be used, but the idea here is that you would have somebody put out a stretched out image, say of a child or something else, that as a person's driving forward, they're seeing it as an actual child standing on the roadway. It could be keyboards, piano keys on a crosswalk that make it look like the crosswalk's floating above the surface. So we consider that, and also the ActiBump. It's a special technology that actually has a spot where if somebody's going too fast, it actually drops down the surface of the road in a mechanism, causing the driver to feel uncomfortable traveling that fast. So when we looked at the 3 locations that were chosen, the first one was Maple Road. And I'll show you more about this in a minute. But for Maple Road, the 3 options that were chosen were lane narrowing, speed cushions, and actually a raised pedestrian crosswalk. At Bel Air Beach Road, we're implementing the chicanes option, which I'll show you a little bit more about in a minute. And at Shore Acre Drive is interesting. We're using an on-road sign pavement marking system. This is actually a more low-cost way of with just putting the pavement markings on the road, and we're hoping to get feedback on this because it's nice to have an option that's not as expensive as some of the others. And I want to make sure everybody knows this is not our recommendations for where in the town there are problems with speeding. That's later on. That's the 10-year plan where we prioritize and identify where the problems are. This was strictly to go ahead with 3 pilot projects, and that's all that this was about. It wasn't anything further than the output from the original model and communications with the town. So first we have Shore Acre Drive. So the idea here is to implement the on-road pavement marking. So this is what it would say is max 50 km/h. And the idea here is to have 3 in the eastbound direction and 3 in the westbound direction. So, you know, as you can imagine, the problem over time would be these would wear off, but they are a lower cost application. So that's what we're doing for Shore Acre Drive. So we're back to the chicanes again. So on Bel Air Beach Road, the plan here is to install chicanes. So this will be a little bit different than the picture. We're going to have a curb that goes around a planter box that's going to be raised much higher. So a driver approaching is going to see that this obstacle is in front of them. The center line will actually guide them. There's the obstacles in this case, and the idea is that the center line and the objects on the side of the road, they cause the driver to kind of veer to one side, veer to the other, making it very uncomfortable for them to try to go through at any high speeds. Okay, so this is just to show you a little bit more on the technical side of how these chicanes are installed. So there would be 3 in the eastbound direction and 3 in the westbound direction, and they alternate from one side to the other. Already on this roadway, you have a designated bike lane. So we're going to make sure that that is not intruded on by the way the lanes shift back and forth, nor where the planters are. So you can see in one direction, the bike path will be behind the planters, and in the other direction, the bike path will be on the other side from the planters. So we're not reducing the width of the cyclist lane at all. Maple Road is several things that are being done there. One is through the extent of the study area. Right now, it's a single center line. And the idea here to start with is to double the center line, to have 2 parallel lines. Right away, you're causing the lanes to be more narrow. Just a simple application of paint makes those lanes more narrow. So we're hoping to get positive effects there. On top of that, we're going to apply speed cushions at either end of the study area. These are different than speed humps. They're not as drastic as a speed hump. They don't jar your teeth as much when you hit them, but they certainly make it uncomfortable to go over them fast. And as you can see in the image on the left-hand side, upper left-hand side, there's room for emergency vehicles to straddle these so that they don't get jarred up and down as well. And just as part of this, we're putting in delineators throughout the roadway. There'll be some in the center line, but just as importantly, we're putting some in between the pedestrian and cyclist path and the first lane. And part of that is that there's an existing problem right now that some people are illegally parking in the bike lane. So this doesn't physically stop them from doing that, but it'll make it very clear that line's not to be crossed. So there's kind of an added benefit that we're testing here as well. This is sort of what it would look like. So these roads you're seeing here, one has just a single center line and the other has none, but we're going to have double center lines with an object marker there at the beginning of them, and then the delineators or bollards on the outside that, and you can see that it makes the lane narrower. Just this type of application can slow vehicles down. So that's what we're testing with that. There's one other important application that we're doing here is that Spooner's Road, that T intersection. It's kind of a natural spot where the pedestrian cyclist trail is on the away side of the road, and there's an entrance down to the water on the other side of the road, which people are walking on. So we're suggesting that this is formalized with an actual PXO crossing. And in this case, we would have a raised pedestrian crosswalk. So your 2 benefits here is if somebody is approaching this crosswalk, they have to slow down or they're going to get jolted as they go over the raised surface, but also that the pedestrians will be raised a bit higher too and become more visible to approaching drivers. So there's a heavy safety influence here. So this is what everything looks like. It looks busy, but it should be a natural feel. And hopefully this entire route, we will see speed reduction. Oh, those are my... Okay, so moving forward to the 10-year traffic calming program. The objectives here are to provide a full inventory of the town and have potential traffic calming locations that could be implemented in a prioritized way over the next 10 years. And this inventory will be based on collision data, collision locations, traffic data, volume data, and community inquiries. So that's what we're hoping to get the feedback from the town moving forward with this, the community. The program will include criteria methodology for prioritizing the potential locations, and that's a big problem. If you have 10 locations and you say we want to put them everywhere, but we can't, where are the top 5? And that's what we're going to try to develop for the town. And there's the next poll.
Okay, great. Thanks, Peter. Jen, if you could launch the next poll. You've heard about some of the pilot locations that we're looking at, and Peter noted that we're not, this won't be it. But we want to know if you have any locations in mind where traffic calming is needed. So if you could, maybe have several locations or 1 or 2 locations, or maybe you don't think there are any locations you have in mind, but if you could share with us, I'll give you another 5 or 10 seconds. 5 seconds, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, so let's see what we have.
So this is really interesting, and I hope from this presentation that the community members understand that this is going to move forward. This information that they're providing moves forward. One of the ingredients in the 10-year plan, a big ingredient, is actual complaints from the town. So of the 15 voters who said that they do have an issue, or they know where an issue is, we hope that that moves forward to communicating with the town, being part of our process and helping spit out the 10-year plan. So this is really important information that needs to be used in the next steps of the project.
Great. All right. Thanks, Peter. Okay.
Want me to go ahead?
Sure. Go to the next one.
Okay, so now we're just summarizing the next steps. I've talked about them quite a bit already. We're going to get your comments. We're going to go through a question and answer process here. We've gotten some comments before the presentation. We have some of these poll questions that we have some answers for. So we're going to use all of that information to help us move forward. We also have the pilot implementation happening, and that will involve monitoring speeds before and after, and doing a statistic evaluation of whether they've worked or not. And as said in one of the poll questions, speeding at night, speeding in the day, afternoon, we're going to look at all of that. We're not going to just say speed has gone down 5 kilometers an hour. We're going to look at the profile of the speed data and see, is it happening? Is it helping at night? Is it happening during the day? Is it happening at all the time? It's not happening at all. So these are the results we're looking for. We're going to continue to develop the design guide that will become the major manual for the town to use moving forward, along with the 10-year traffic calming program that I've talked about, and ultimately guidance for updating the traffic calming policy of the town so that these things become the standard in the town. Okay, so JL, you want to take it there?
Sure. Thanks, Peter. So, as we go through this process, we want to hear from residents about, traffic calming, their concerns, feedback about, the pilots as they go forward. And there's a few different ways that the public can do that. So a key way is the Get Involved Innisfil project webpage. So you can see here on your screen that there's a website. So if you go to getinvolvedinnisfil.ca/TCS, you can go there and you can get some information. And as we go through the process, we'll update the project website from time to time. You can click on the Stay Informed subscribe button. So that when there are updates to the webpage, you'll be able to be kept informed of any updates that happen, for new events, or, we're looking at doing an online survey and also another open house sometime in the fall. There's also a map tool. We've had a couple of questions about or comments or suggestions for traffic calming locations, and we saw that in the last poll that people do have locations in mind where they think there should be traffic calming. So please take a visit to the traffic calming map tool, and you click on that. You can indicate where you think it should be, and also indicate why you think it should be there too. What is the particular issue that that you see there?
Okay, so I'll go to this page now here if you want.
Sure.
So that's, just give me a second.
Yep. Okay, so we're about to start our question and answer period. So I have a couple of questions that came in, so I'll share that with the team in a moment, and we'll have Peter, we'll put Peter on the spot and we'll get him to answer that. If you want to ask a question as well, you can raise your hand using the raise hand button. And you can also, if you're not able to find that, if that's not working for you, you can send a direct message to me, and I can read your question as well. So I don't see any hands yet. I'm going to ask Peter a couple of questions that we had here. So one person notes that they believe that speed humps are discriminatory towards disabled people. They have a relative who has chronic nerve pain, and they have a hard time with speed humps. So their question is, have the concerns of disabled members of the community been factored into the traffic calming plan, or will that be part of the traffic calming strategy?
So as part of our background research, I showed in the slide there that we had 46 different methodologies that we were investigating. And as part of the design guide, we created a master table of all those. And what we have in columns is the positive and negative aspects of each mechanism. And that can help the town know what is going to be better or worse for the town. And one of those, a very common application is speed humps. I have them out front of my house here, and a lot of people don't like them, but there's a lot of other alternatives. And the idea is with this study is that we would let the town, we would have the information in a guide that they can go through, and they can say, are we considering speed humps? What could be the negative ramifications? Is it a safety issue? Is it a noise issue? Is it a financial issue? Maintenance issue? There's all kinds of things that come into play with each of the 46 methodologies. So the town is not going to be handcuffed to one or two. They're going to have the whole board there, and every different situation they can go back and they can look at all the alternatives and pick the best one. So I think that's a big result of what we're giving them, is a wider spread of options, and also guidelines on when some are better than others.
Okay, thanks, Peter. So another question we have is, can traffic lights be part of a traffic calming strategy?
Yes, they can. In some cities, you have a progression set up on a one-way street so that everybody hits the green light when they get to it. But what you can do in that programming is have it that if you go faster than the speed limit, you're going to get to a red, and then to another red, and then to another red. That it's going to be optimized for the driver. If they go a slower speed, they'll hit all of the progressions on green lights. The other I said in the presentation that you can do is if you have a actuated signalized intersection, especially at night, and you normally have a through green light and at standard that's on all the time, and red in the other direction, that only turns green in the other direction if somebody approaches. What you can do is have it all red, so that all 4 approaches or 3 approaches that the car has to slow down and literally come to a stop as they're going through the intersection. Well, hopefully what it does is it stops people from blazing right through when they know ahead of them they've got a green light.
Okay, thanks, Peter. So another comment that came in is about some concerns about running of stop signs, especially on Mapleview East Drive East, and also cars passing on hills. Is there anything of the measures that you've looked at? Is there anything that would help address those types of issues?
Yeah, I guess the stuff that we're talking about, like lane narrowing and some of the textured pavement and some of that, the idea on those, you could even have roadside rumble strips, so that if people are going to try, or a centerline rumble strip as being used in many parts of Canada, so that if you do make a maneuver that you're not supposed to make, there's a direct reaction to your vehicle that you've done something you shouldn't do. It's awfully tough to pair in running a stop sign, except that if you keep the speeds in general slower coming towards it, it might be less likely that somebody does do that. It's probably more of an issue. It's a safety issue for sure, which is just a little outside of our scope. We are certainly taking into consideration safety, but the world of traffic safety is much broader than this big topic. And so it might tie into other things that the town can do, like set up cameras for people that jump red lights or jump stop signs, or have more enforcement. You don't want to leave it always to enforcement, but that may be the key, is that on a particular roadway, they may have speeding and also people running the stop sign. And so it might be a combination of measures that need to fix the problem.
Okay. And what about so areas where there's a more senior population? Would an area like that use maybe different types of measures compared to an area that has a lower seniors population?
Yeah, so we talked about that one of the priorities is not just the cars on the road, but the other users, whether it's mobility impaired or cyclists or pedestrians. And a good example of how we're trying to test something like that is on Maple Road at Spooners Road to have that raised crosswalk. Raised crosswalk is definitely something that people are not going to regularly approach and hit at full speed. And it also provides a safer environment for people to cross, because it's not just a designated crossing, but it raises them up a little higher. So if you have a seniors complex and they have two entrances on the other side of the road, you have parking lots, maybe you need two raised crosswalks that will slow traffic down and also provide more visibility for the people walking across. There's many ways to combine all of these methodologies to slow people down, but also provide better protection for people crossing the road or on the side of the road or children or so on.
Okay, thanks, Peter. Let me see. Okay, so another question is, let me see. In the municipalities that are using automated radar, does it pay for itself via fines, or is this a costlier traffic calming option?
That might be one for the town to answer. It seems that anytime that this is used, it has different results depending on the environment. I don't think any town would consider something like that cash equal, that you'd get as much coming in as you're putting out. It shouldn't really be the objective with that. Just the application itself is going to have a cost to it as well. It's hard to explain. I would never say that it's going to pay for itself. I would never say that as a positive. It does provide a revenue, but Carolina, maybe you can speak better about that.
Yeah, certainly. So in the Ontario context, when we've heard from other municipalities, certainly some of the very large ones who have very high traffic volumes and therefore can issue a lot of tickets because there's a lot of violations, do tend to make a small amount of money. Municipalities of our size and smaller, it tends to be a cost instead.
Right. Yeah, so there's no absolute answer to that, I guess, JL.
Okay. And here's another question with no absolute answer. So the comment here is enforcement as an option doesn't get enough support, I think. It doesn't involve modifications to the road surface that impact people who travel the speed limit, and it also won't impact snow removal. So how are there, like, how could enforcement be more of a traffic calming measure?
Well, that's tough. I mean, a lot of these measures, you need the enforcement side to be there to keep an eye on things. It's obvious that if they get an initial call that they're having a problem, it'll take time to go through the traffic calming protocol that the town has for decision making, coming up with a solution, implementing it. When you might need a more immediate solution. And that's going to tend to be the enforcement getting out there. I don't think it's fair to put everything on the shoulders of enforcement, because as we saw in the poll there, speeding is happening all 24 hours of the day, 7 days of the week. And it's hard for them to be everywhere all the time. So we're not, as part of this process that we're suggesting they go through, it's not to depend on enforcement. You can't just depend that they'll always be at the right place at the right time. And hopefully you get something you can put in place. Some of these measures are temporary. You can put, like, the pedestrian crosswalk that we're having at Maple Road, you can take that up and move it. So there's ways to kind of move around the town in conjunction with enforcement and try to put up signs here, try it here, but they are a big component. It's just that in the past, it tends to be all lumped on them, slow people down. And the idea here is that you have 46 measures that you can consider in addition to just the enforcement.
Okay, thanks, Peter. So I have another question here. So are there better solutions for pedestrian crossings on arterial roads to allow the flow of routes for children getting to school that do not have signal-like crossings?
Yeah, so that's a whole study, that's a whole science on its own of where you put pedestrian crossings and what type you put in and the flashing lights and all of that. It can be done in conjunction with traffic calming. I don't want to go too far to the side of how you decide at school zones and so on. That's a whole science. That is a whole it's a connected issue, but it's hard to answer in this venue. But you can certainly use traffic calming measures to help that strategy. So you could use raised crosswalks, you could use lane narrowing, you could use these other measures to slow people down on these routes, in addition to something that's a protected strategic crossing.
Okay, great. So those are all of the message that I have received through the text. And if I haven't got your question, then maybe it hasn't popped in here. Is there, and I don't see anyone raising their hand. Are there any questions from the floor? No? Okay. Let me see. I think one sent to you, Peter. Are you able to check your chat? I know you probably,
just give me a second here.
I know you may not have seen it while you were presenting, but.
Okay, so yeah, I didn't see it at the time, but I have them in front of me here. So let me just see. The town data that you collect from residents with regards to speed complaints, do you as well collect speeding complaints from South Simcoe Police as well? So that would be Carolina maybe can answer that question.
So South Simcoe Police has certainly shared speeding information with us in the past. Generally, though, the information travel goes the other way. They don't tend to collect speed data in the same way that we do. They will do localized radar data collection for a short period of time, but it's being done by a human, whereas ours is automated. So we will have it out for a week, and therefore ours is a bit more complete. And as I said, the information tends to go from us to them, although we do get information from them as well.
Okay, and I have one more question here. I think most of them you already covered, JL, but I have one more here. It's a long one, but I'm just gonna. I don't think you said this one. I know it is difficult to test different calming methods in so many areas, but is there any consideration to the multiple pilot methods based on the types of roads? Shore Acre is mainly arterial right off the 400, whereas the other two are really more localized traffic. Is there any consideration for tighter delineators to really slow down the traffic or multiple trials for each area to get a full understanding of the effective measures? So it's a good question. And we did take this into consideration. We did have the 5 resulting roads, and with the town, we went down to 3. And one of them was Shore Acre Drive, where you have rural traffic coming in and you want them to slow down. That's why we put the chicanes in place. That's quite a drastic mechanism to put in place. Also, Maple Road has the cyclist path, pedestrian path there. So you're going to have all those vulnerable users. You have the beach or the lake on the other side of the road. And, you know, you had issues of people parking illegally and all of that kind of stuff. So it kind of gave us a really good spot to try multiple solutions. That one was a big one because you're going to have a lot of, from what we understand, there's a lot of people cross the road, walking or biking, especially in the summertime. And we're doing a lot of things. Like if you think about it with the crosswalk, the raised crosswalk, that's not there right now. And so if people are randomly walking across the road from the pedestrian cyclist trail, potentially this will channel them in and get them to cross at one location. So that was all taken into consideration when we were deciding which roads and also what mechanisms were going to be put in place. But it's, you know, that's up to the town. If they want to take the results of this pilot study and move forward and try other things temporarily in locations, this guidance we're giving them, the 10-year plan design guide, will allow them to do that.
Great.
So that's the only one I have. That's the only other one I have.
Okay, well, perfect. Well, thanks for that, Peter. And I would just remind people as well, if you you know, have any questions, you've had maybe the night to think about it or a couple of days, feel free to email the question into us. I know there were a few comments that we've received that were suggestions on where they thought traffic location or traffic calming measures would be good. And so we'll take that as well. And I just would want to remind people that if you have some locations in mind, go to the map tool and plop them in and let us know in that tool why you think they should be traffic calming there. And that'll give something for the team to take a look at and consider when they do their analysis on where the traffic calming measures should be. So I think with that, that basically brings us to an end of our evening tonight. So I just want to say thank you to everyone for coming out, for your interest in traffic calming and in the project, and for your questions. You can keep them coming in, and we'll keep working on things. So I just want to hand it over now to Daryl from the town. Take it away, Daryl.
Thank you, Pete and Jean-Louis, for this evening. I'd like to thank all those that have attended, and EXP for your work today. And at this time, I'd like to open the floor to Mayor Dolan if she has some words to speak.
Thank you, Peter and Jean-Louis. Thank you, Daryl. Really appreciate you being here this evening. And I wanted to just comment that there's quite a few members of council. This is an issue that your council has been seized with for many years. So we have with us Deputy Mayor Dan Davidson, Councillor Bill Van Berkel, Councillor Donna Orsatti, Councillor Kenneth Fowler, sorry, Councillor Carolyn Payne, and Councillor Rob Nicol, who've all joined this evening. Also, for the past 4 years, we've had a very dedicated group from our School Zone and Traffic Safety Committee who've met monthly on this issue. So I want to recognize Carlene Doyle and Joel Jacobson, who have also joined us this evening. So thank you so much for being here. This is something that has seized us. It was an issue. It has been an issue. It was an issue in the last election. It became more of an issue during COVID. There was more aggressive driving when the streets were less crowded. And we know it's not just us. We know it's all of Ontario. And as you said, Peter, all of the world that's dealing with these issues. So we're really pleased to have had the funding through our gas tax funding to hire EXP to do this study for us. But it doesn't stop there. We have great participation from South Simcoe Police. Our staff sergeant in front of traffic is just an amazing advocate for us. And also from our chief, I think he's on here tonight, Chief Thomas from our fire and rescue services as well. So we're very fortunate here, although, you know, we know this is a dragon we have to slay, and there's not one easy answer, and we have to keep continuing through both traffic calming, enforcement. We learned this week that the Ministry of Transportation has the regs on ASE, automated speed enforcement for smaller municipalities to make it more attainable for us are posted. So we're looking forward to seeing what we can do, because right now only the largest municipalities can afford that type of service. So and we're working with our school boards and having some success with our school boards in making sure that they're making things safe for their students coming in and out. So a great evening. We know it's a #1 issue in our community, and we want to keep finding solutions. And we know that this, having you here do these different experiments with us, will be a great way to move forward and keep us being an out-of-the-box thinker in everything we do, in particular in traffic safety. So thank you.
On the education side, I have a 16-year-old son who's just starting to drive, and that's the key time to start getting it into their heads. So the safety implications of some of these, you know, cars are so comfortable now. Every car pretty well is an automatic. Everything has a big engine in it. It's easy to drive fast. Roads are smoother. Curves are smoother. It's easy to drive fast, and it all comes down to the driver themselves, either knowing not to speed or being uncomfortable speeding. That's really what it comes down to.
You're right, and I will say that one of the things we did invest in was a camera, but it doesn't issue tickets. It issues warning letters. So the camera, the data goes to our police services, and our staff sergeant Phillips gets all that data. And where the camera right now is, he's finding that there is one car with the same license plate that's causing a problem 6 or 7 times a week. So he's able to phone that family and say, hey, just so you know, this is what's happening, in case it's near a high school. So in case it is a student, might not be, but in case it is, that the parents have this information, they can talk to their child. So we're doing what we can, but it's never enough. And we really, really appreciate your expertise moving us forward.
Okay, well, happy to be here. So John Louis, are we done, or did you?
I think Daryl, so any last words, or is anyone else from the town that would like to speak, or think we're good to sign off?
I think that's good to sign off at this point.
Okay, great. Well, thanks again, everyone, for coming out. And I guess that's a wrap. Have a good evening.
Okay, take care,
Thank you
everybody.
very much.
Drive
See you.
safe.
Bye.